Developing the Leader Within podcast, leading beyond limits.
Welcome back, everyone. If you haven't subscribed, please do so right now. It will help our show get to others and help us get to our next milestone. Make sure to catch us streaming on Roku and Amazon Fire TV on the Purpose Place Network, and catch our exclusive members-only content Going Deeper Within on the Lions Guide Academy. Today, we are speaking with Chris Weiher. Chris is the owner of Cleaver Creative. He grows startups and mid-sized businesses into massive brands using video to drive the results they want. He guides clients looking to build their authority and thought leadership online to grow robust networks, ignite conversations, and close deals, primarily through podcasts and video content marketing. Chris, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Enrique. I am very happy to be here.
Well, we are excited to have you and cover this subject, which is very vital to leaders. And folks, we'll be speaking about lead on camera, how to build a powerful brand through video. But Chris, before we get into that conversation, tell us a little bit about you that the folks may not know.
So, I have been running my company, Cleaver Creative, for 14 years now. And we do a lot of different kinds of video content. We started out doing a ton of animation. Now we're doing more podcasts and vlogs for businesses. And I think I really kind of came into my own on LinkedIn, which is where you and I met, because when we started doing video on LinkedIn, probably 5 years ago, nobody was doing video on LinkedIn. So it was this really kind of exciting new place to be doing video. And as you have, a background in business and professionalism, so do I in B2B video. So we're kind of uniquely positioned to be creating videos there. And to me, it has become like probably my favorite and the best way to have real conversations around what we do, compared to a lot of the other social media platforms. So that's become sort of my niche. Now we are getting more into advertising, as you know. I reached out to you earlier this year with a backdrop like this and said, "Hey, what if we make one of these for you?" And that's been working out well, and we're looking at some other opportunities there too. So yeah, it's an exciting time, I guess, for me to be making video content, and sharing it with people.
Yes, we are in a world and a time where video is king right now. I don't think that that's going to go away anytime soon because people just like to see real life played out on a platform. They can just chime in, right? Be the fly on the wall, as we like to say. And video is taking a lot of traction. But today I want to talk about leaders and video and how that interaction can actually work for a leader. So let's talk about a leader as a brand, because that's something that a lot of leaders fail to recognize, that they must start creating a brand around their leadership. Many leaders focus on developing their internal leadership skills, but overlook their external digital presence. So, how can leaders intentionally build a personal brand through digital marketing that truly reflects their leadership values and vision?
Yeah, I try and help people simplify it as much as possible because there are, 1,000 people making video, 1,000,000 people making videos about here's how you got to make your brand and here's how you got to make your videos. And then there's nothing wrong with anything that people, preach, but sometimes it can feel overcomplicated. So basically, I try and simplify it to people to say, if you care about what you're talking about, that is all that matters. Like, you can get really caught up in saying, oh, this is really hot right now. Should I talk about this? Or this is controversial. Should I talk about this? This will get more views. This will get more conversation. If you truly believe in what you're talking about, that's really all that matters, because that will naturally attract people who not necessarily agree with you, but want to have that conversation with you and want to contribute their voice, and you can have a real conversation around it. So that's what I tell people to use as their sort of guiding principle is like, do I care about this myself? Then yeah, like talk more about it. So that's the number one thing that I recommend for people. The other thing that I recommend for people is try and narrow some things down to maybe three general places that you want to go. So for me, that tends to be, video production and content marketing, obviously. But then I also really enjoy talking about, futurism, AI, where are things headed? And, basically, I only really talk about those two things for the most part. I guess I do talk a little bit about my personal life, but I don't do a ton of that. More people do more of that where they post more family pictures and more things going on vacation, all these different things. I do just a very little bit about that. But I would say the more niche you are, the more you need to consider some affiliate type topics. So if you are a big, football fan for your local team, you can talk about that as part of your content because that's going to bring in a certain group of people to get to know you that then when they see your other posts about your thoughts on leadership or your thoughts on development, they might be more, apt to listen to those other posts as well if they follow your stuff for football. So there's this, I think, oftentimes a hesitancy for professionals and leaders to talk about things that aren't work related. And I would encourage people, if they really do have an interest and a passion in it, still talk about those things because you will grow a wider audience that then can become interested in your thoughts around leadership.
Yeah, that's very true. And folks, if you are talking about professionalism, that's obviously perfectly fine, but that's 8 hours of your day, right? So that represents 8 hours a day. What's the other representation about? And this is what we're talking about. Hey, maybe you want to tie in some other things. And Chris, we had talked about, and I remember specifically your walking videos,
Yeah.
because and how I remember those the most is because I felt like you brought me along.
Right.
That's how I
Yes.
felt. Hey, Chris, hey, I'm here this week, I'm doing this. And I said, oh, wow, what a way to bring in your story along with, hey, come along with me. And that's the power of video storytelling, right? So video has become one of the most powerful ways to connect with audiences. From your experience at Cleaver Creative, what makes a leader's video content authentic and engaging rather than just promotional?
So you're right in the fact that you can do like a ton with video and there's all these kinds of, editing tricks and hooks you can do and, camera tricks and stuff like that. And um, I do encourage people to get creative with their content and have fun with their content. Ultimately, if you are having fun making it, we're going to have fun watching it. Um, it does not have to be super complicated. Generally, what I try and tell people to do is just start simple. Don't try and censor yourself too much. Um, what I think is most important is creating a cadence that you actually feel is sustainable potentially for a long time. Because as you and I have known each other for a long time, but it was only today that I really learned about your background in, oceanography and what's the meteorology, right? And we've known each other for 5, 6 years, right? On LinkedIn, I knew you were at a military background, and you've probably mentioned maybe some of those details, but because the world is so noisy, like we don't know as we we don't people don't know as much about us as we think they do, right? So the cadence is really important. You have to think about, can I sustain creating a video a week? Can I sustain creating a video a day? Can I sustain creating a video a month? and then try and stick with that over a longer period of time. You don't have to stick with it. It's not mandatory. Video is not for everybody, but you want to think about that cadence. And then as you do that cadence, you will naturally bring that creativity to your videos. You will naturally go, okay, I've done a video like this. I've done a video like this. I saw somebody out there walking down the street looking like a jerk holding their phone up like I do and talking to themselves. Maybe I'll try it. Maybe it's not such a bad thing. And then you'll see the reactions that you get from people, and people go, "Oh, cool," you know. Like I traveled around the world for 14 months, and I was in Mexico City and San Francisco and Europe, all these different places, and it was kind of a cool way to be able to bring my audience in and bring my network in and say, "Hey guys, here's what Croatia is like today. Here's where I'm at." So I think the cadence is probably my advice there, is as far as saying try and think about what's sustainable for you over a long period of time, and then the creativity will just naturally become part of what you do, because you can get bored, right, making the same video all the time, and you'll be like, oh, I want to try something different.
Yeah, absolutely. Now you mentioned something important, the noisiness, right, of the world. And let's talk about strategy meeting authenticity. In a noisy digital world, how can leaders strike the right balance between a strategic marketing approach and authentic communication so their message resonates without feeling manufactured?
I think that you do want to have some, strategy and some purpose to your content. um I think you do want to think about, your target audience. So if you are basically using your content for professional development, what does that mean to you? Like, are you trying to teach people who are younger than you, like, what does it mean to be a leader and what you've learned? Are you trying to create this content to help you maybe level up in your career and get seen by other organizations or network with other people in your industry? Those two kinds of audiences are going to inform how you make your content very differently. And that's not to say you can't kind of try different things and say, well, actually, I get a really good reaction from these videos for younger people, so I'm going to make more of that content, and maybe I'll make 10% of my content for my peers and talk to, topics that are interesting to them. But I would say start there, start with the audience. Think about, who do I really want to be watching this and contributing to this? And how do I serve them with my content? How do I actually help those people? If you're coming from a place of helping your audience, you probably are just going to naturally be authentic in what you're making, because you're not just trying to get views and trying to get attention. You're basically like, I want to help you learn this, or I want to help you by learning from my mistake or a story that I've done, that maybe worked out or didn't work out. Um, so that's kind of the strategic and the authentic part, and that kind of just keeps coming back to that one overarching, uh, you know, direction, which is, if you care about it, talk about it. So that can be like the fallback if you're like, I don't know, does this feel cheesy? Does it not? It's like, if do I care about this? I'm gonna make it.
Yeah, I was just about to say, yeah, I think you mentioned it before. If you do feel a certain kind of way that's deep in you about that subject, these things become a whole lot easier and less manufactured than it is to try to say, oh, I need to talk about this, but you don't really have it all together on that. And you're trying to push it out anyway. So it is important to hone in on the things that you really do feel passionate about, because it makes it a whole lot easier. Now, leaders have this thing, and we're talking about branding for leaders, but then they have this second component to them that is, hey, I got to represent these people I work for, right? And
Right.
so at times you're representing yourself, but then there are company policies. They be like, well, you can't talk about this, you can't talk about that. So with team and culture and aligning that with their organization, and as organizations grow, aligning marketing and leadership messages become critical. And so, what role does leadership play in ensuring that a company's brand and culture are consistently represented in its digital advertising and video content?
Yeah, so I think that that has become a more accepted space to be able to have some flexibility in. I think 10 years ago, even, um, people really were nervous about, well, if I put this out on Twitter, what's my company going to say? And what happens if my boss sees it? And that type of thing. Obviously, you can go with the adage of, like if you don't want your mom to see it, don't put it out, right? um, that's probably the best advice. It's like if mom saw it and was like, I don't know if you should have done that, then maybe don't put that out there because it's not going to your boss also isn't going to like it. I think most people know that, and I think that hesitancy to be able to create content has kind of gone away as it's become more accepted. There's so much more professional content on LinkedIn, so I think there's a little bit less worry there. Um, I think it is still a challenge, especially for people as they get higher up in organizations to go, I don't know. Is this a risk? Is this like risky in addition to potentially helping me? Is there like a risk reward element? And you do have to take that into consideration. My advice there would be get started, start making something, right? Decide on like a cadence once a month and record it, right? If you record it, there's no contract that says you have to post it, right? You can record it. You can record 2, 3 vlogs in one day, and then you can review them and watch them and go, hmm, actually, I only like two of these. I'm only going to post two of these, right? And so I think that's the other hesitancy that people have is they go, well, I just spent, an hour recording my first video and now I have to post it. And it's like, well, you don't. Like you can take some time. You can look at it from a new lens and then just like feel good about it and go, yeah, I think this does represent me. And if my boss or my colleagues saw it, they would also think it represents me well. I'm going to post it. So I would just kind of like say like you don't have to post everything you record and you don't have to keep it up forever too. Like if you post something right and you're like you got crickets or you realized after you posted it like I don't really like it anymore, just delete the post. Like nothing is permanent here. And the last thing I'll say on this is that I don't remember who I should learn who to attribute this quote to, but there's a famous quote that is like, people will forget what you do, will forget what you say, but they will not forget how you made them feel. And that is totally true. Like, I've put out so many posts before that I'm just like, that bombed. That didn't work. That didn't get the likes I thought it was going to get. Guarantee you, almost nobody in my network remembers those, right? Like, they just because there's too much going on. So as long as you're putting out stuff that you feel good about and you feel like you're getting the right general feelings from people, you're probably fine.
Yeah, and it's also important to find out from your company what their position is, right? By policy, because you don't want to find out after
The wrong way. Yes.
after you put it out and now you're trying to backpedal and delete and all this other thing, but the damage is done, right? So
Right.
find out from your employer what their policy is, navigate that policy, right? Because policies are read a certain way, but there's interpretation, right? So navigate that with a lot of thought because this is tied to probably your paycheck, and find the right balance. Find the right balance where you could still show up, build a brand for yourself as a leader, and also by way of doing that, complement your company in a good way. Now, I will caveat that I have ran into a situation where my videos, my content was so good, not by my own assessment, but they were so good that now I was basically a threat. And so that is something that as leaders, you also need to be wary of how much you are outgrowing the company that you're with, because you might have to, make a decision there.
Yeah. The other thing that I was thinking of as you were saying that is I think there can be an intuition from people to talk about everything at the same sort of time frame. And generally, what I recommend folks do, especially for entrepreneurs who are talking about things that are going right and wrong for their business or with their clients or with their projects, is to say, oh, well, we have this big problem right now. I want to talk about it in my content. And usually, my advice is to say, write it down, put it in your notes, and then come back to that topic in 6 or 12 months and talk about it with a little bit of distance. So you can say, 6 months ago, I was having this issue with my team. We weren't gelling. People weren't listening. We didn't have like good communication, etc. And then hopefully by that time, the problem will have changed, or at least there'll be less of a sting if someone was to see that from your team, who's been now transferred to another team, and they go, yeah, that was a problem 6 months ago. We weren't communicating, whatever. Don't talk about things immediately that aren't working because they're kind of hot topics at that time, but you can talk about it in a year, and you can certainly more easily talk about something after you've left a company and go, 2 years ago when I was with this company, here's one of the things that wasn't working. This boss wasn't talking to this boss, and this wasn't working. Here's how I resolved it. Here's how we worked through it. So I try and encourage people to like talk about what's working now, the wins, the great things that are happening. That's more easy to talk about, and then write down the things that aren't, because you're going to have lessons there, you're going to have content there, but just because it feels urgent in the moment doesn't mean that you actually do need to talk about it then.
Absolutely. Now, talking about things that you need to write down and kind of plan out, let's talk about some actionable steps for leaders. For leaders who may feel overwhelmed by the idea of creating video content or developing a digital brand, what are three practical steps that they can take to start leveraging digital marketing and advertising effectively?
So I would recommend think about those three categories first. Think about like how many of them do you want to be business related? How many of them do you want to be like an affiliate topic, something that's like not exactly related to your work, but it's that outside of work time. It could be family, it could be your faith, it could be sports, it could be a hobby, it could be any of these different things. But try and like pick three and stay in those kinds of categories to see if you can start to get some conversations going. See if there's interest in your opinions on those topics. Once you have those three, I would try and list out, 10 things that people ask you about those topics. Some things that like you find yourself getting into conversations with, over and over, or like having to kind of explain or like teach to other people around those topics. And then if you can, try and write down 10 things that you're not asked about those topics, but you really wish somebody would ask you about. And for me, that, one of my, I think it was my first video that I ever made was why make videos on LinkedIn. People would often ask, how do I do it? How much does it cost? How much time does it take? Like, what do I talk about these different things? But people wouldn't always ask, like, why? And so that was one of the first videos that I made because it was something that I was excited about, I was passionate about, and I had like kind of a unique take on, and it got a great response. So those questions that you aren't asked but you wish you were, that's a great place to start as well.
Now, Chris, you have your company, been doing it for a while. You're helping people create this brand through video and stuff like that. What do you have coming up, and where can the viewer or the listener follow or support your efforts?
Yeah, they can follow me on LinkedIn. They can just search for my first and last name, Chris. Last name is Weiher, Weiher. We, I, her, three pronouns and a last name somehow. And I put out a video a week there, as you know. And that's probably the easiest way that I connect and interact with people and put out the majority of our content. With Cleaver, we put out our stuff on Facebook and Instagram, but it's more business related. So if they want to connect on a personal way and kind of see my thoughts on a week to week basis, LinkedIn is the place.
All right. Well, folks, we'll have the links necessary for you to be able to support Chris and look at his work, and also the website where you can go and entertain him for business purposes. Now, today's episode is sponsored by the Global Trends Magazine, the Outlier Project, Fantail Services, Ascend Meditations, and Chop AI. And if you've enjoyed this episode and learned something interesting about the topic covered today, make sure to like, share, and subscribe, and let us know by leaving a comment. Tune in next week for another episode where we dissect leadership from another angle. And as we like to end the show, success to you.